Hi, this is PatZi with a Z. Welcome to Joy on Paper Live, a program for writers and those who dream of writing. And I am so happy today to welcome to Joy on Paper Sofia Robleda. And we are going to be talking about her wonderful book. It's called The Other Moctezuma Girls. And I'm so happy to welcome you here. Hi, how are you?
Hi, PatZi with a Z. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's so nice. I so enjoy the book, and I'm so interested in the process that you've gone through. This is a big work that you've been working on for many years, I think.
Yes,
And
yes.
just tell us about it because I think my listeners will certainly be interested. We have one of the things I like very much about the book. It is also a story about sisters, and I've been getting a lot of books recently about sister relationships. I thought it would be a great time to talk to you. So tell us about your book.
Yeah, so it's a historical fiction novel, part fictional memoir, part adventure story, and it's set in 16th century Mexico. It's a kind of half the story of the last Aztec empress, Tecuichpoch, and who passes away at the start of the novel, and she leaves behind a will. Then her kind of daughter discovers that her mother has left another will, a testament of her life and everything that she went through in order to survive the Spanish conquest. And she goes on a quest around the Valley of Mexico with her sister and brother to piece together all the stories that her mom hid around the Valley of Mexico and just discover who her mother was. And these were real people. It was the last empress, as I said, and her daughter Isabel and Catalina were real as well. But this is obviously a fictionalized kind of account of what may have happened after that and the death of Tecuichpoch, who was baptized Isabel Moctezuma. Yes.
It starts, this is really 30 years after the conquest of that was right in
Yeah.
1519. Tell us when you came up with the idea for this story, how important it was for you to look back at this history and how did it affect you? Did you know all of this history when you started?
I knew quite a lot. I guess being Mexican and already having had researched one novel, my original novel, my debut novel, Daughter of Fire, is also set coincidentally around the same time in 16th century Guatemala. So I'd already done a lot of foundational research into the Spanish conquest, and it was through this research that I found out about the Tecuichpoch. And I obviously knew about her father, Moctezuma, the last emperor, the emperor of the Aztecs at the time that Hernan Cortez arrived was Moctezuma, and then he was killed. And then the last Aztec emperor was Cuauhtemoc, and every Mexican knows these names. Every Mexican knows Cuauhtemoc and Moctezuma, but I'd never heard of Tecuichpoch, and I'd never known that she was a daughter of Moctezuma and that she had been married to Cuauhtemoc. And so when I was doing my research for Daughter of Fire and I came across just a little snippet of her life, was maybe a paragraph about how she had left her will, like the only kind of document that she, I guess, was involved in was her last will and testament where she released all of her slaves, which was quite a big deal at the time. It was very rare for this to happen, and she emancipated hundreds if not thousands of people. And so that was really quite shocking to me, that I didn't know about her, that I didn't know that she had survived the Spanish conquest and had 6 marriages and 7 children, and including a child with Hernan Cortez. So this kind of stuck with me as I was trying to find a publisher for my debut, and she just stayed with me for many years, and I just knew that I needed to write her story because she just wouldn't leave me alone, really. She was pushing me to write. Yeah.
That's what happens with writers.
Yes.
Sometimes the
Yes.
characters, and particularly when you're working with a historical character, suddenly they want to come back to life and they're talking,
They
you
take
know.
over. I remember thinking about her as I gave birth to my son in the hospital and kind of thinking about her and just thinking, how would I write her story now that I had a child? But then I was like, if she could do everything that she did and survive everything that she did, I can definitely make it through one child in a very nice country and with good healthcare. I can do this.
It's, as I said, when I got the book, I was intrigued because I did like the idea of sisters whose father was not it doesn't come across as evil. He's Spanish. In so many of the books, every side is evil. They make this one evil, they make that one evil. But there's a nuance here that you dealt with because they do have a father who is Spanish, as opposed.
Yeah, yeah, and this was her last husband that she had most of her children with, the five kind of children and the siblings that we follow through the story. And this husband of hers, I guess, spent a lot of time in court fighting for her right to have as much land as she was due as the kind of natural lady of the land. And from my research, it seemed like this last relationship that she had was pretty solid as it could have possibly been for someone who had had five previous husbands, that she was very likely not remotely involved in whether she wanted to be married or not.
Yeah, they married her off quite as a
Yeah,
political.
yeah. She was a queen, but she was a pawn in throughout most of her life. She was a child during this Spanish conquest. It was just, she lived a very incredible and difficult life, but somehow she persisted and perseverated and resisted. And I just felt like there's very little that we know about her, even in all the research I did. And I spent a long time trying to find as much information as I could on her. There's chapters here and there in books and articles, some articles, but really there is no biography about her. There's nothing much to go on except what I've basically told you about her husbands and her children. That's what is in her will. It's difficult because I do have to make a lot of kind of educated guesses based on what we know about how women lived at the time and the culture that both the Mexica and the kind of Spanish had. So I did also spend a lot of time researching what did Mexica women, sorry, Mexica as an Aztec, because the
That's what
Aztecs
I was
didn't
going
call
to just
themselves.
say.
Yes.
Mexica is the name
Yes.
for Aztec.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Aztecs, yeah, that's right. So the Aztecs didn't call themselves Aztecs, they called themselves Mexica. So I did a lot of research as to what the cultural norms were for women at the time, both Mexica women and Spanish women, and how she might have navigated those different situations. And yeah, so I didn't want to be like, oh, these people are just evil and these people are good. I feel like that's boring and it's not really quite true, and actually it's not even historically accurate. Yes, the Spanish were incredibly abusive and they came in ravaged and went wild, but at the same time there was a lot of discussion and a lot of people who were saying, actually, this is wrong, we need to be doing better. And lots of people did learn like the native languages of the land. It's just, there's a lot of kind of, it was a very nuanced time. There was a lot of conversations going on about how do we treat people in a Christian way, but enforcing those beliefs and what was supposed to be done was quite difficult. So anyway, I'm just blabbing on a little bit, but yeah.
It's from the perspective of people like who don't know anything about. So many people don't know anything about history at all. That the Aztec history, we hear a lot about it. As people in America or people in Europe, they hear a lot about it. They don't know a lot of details. They know there's fighting and they know there was bad things, but nobody knows exactly what it was like. And there are so many, it's beautiful how they are doing so much research, and the archaeological digs that they've discovered lately are so exciting. They're
Yes.
discovering a lot of things. So I don't know if you've gone on to some of those digs and seen some of the research.
I did go to Mexico. Obviously, I'm from there, but I went back with a more research focused lens. And I went to the Museum of Anthropology and the Museum of the Templo Mayor, which is the museum where they have put all of the artifacts that they have found from the center of Mexico, where they had the big pyramids that the Spanish saw and dismantled. And I spent so many hours in those museums, and they're just fantastic places to immerse yourself, world-class displays. And yeah, I mean, there's been research into these civilizations, which are still alive. These are not people that have gone away. There's still people that speak Nahuatl today, is spoken by millions of people. So it's just, and the history of the Aztecs and the Maya, for example, stems back millennia. It's a really long, rich history. But obviously what we learn in school is always, oh, these civilizations were there, and then the Spanish came. And it's from that point on is where we talk about people. Whereas I feel like it's good to broaden that perspective and to immerse yourself in what these civilizations were like, and obviously acknowledge as well that they're still alive today.
Tell us, no, to make it clear to the readers of the book, what at that point in time, when, let's say, you're not concentrating on the conquistadors, because that's your story starts 30 years later, but just tell us briefly, what did people find? What did the Spanish find? What kind of civilization was it at that point when they arrived? What was the sort of the layout, physical layout, and the sort of governmental relationship?
Yeah, so Hernan Cortez arrived in Yucatan, and he was incredibly lucky because he found a girl who spoke Yucatec Maya and Nahuatl, and there was a shipwrecked man who spoke Castilian. He was Spanish, he was shipwrecked from Cuba, and he spoke Spanish. So he was able to get an understanding of the kind of political situation in the Mexica Empire at the time, which stemmed from like the Pacific Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico. The Mexica ruled from their island city of Tenochtitlan, which is now Mexico City. And Mexico City back then was it's always been a valley, but in the middle of this valley was 5 lakes, and they had built the city on this lake. And the Spanish kind of traveled from Yucatan into the center towards Tenochtitlan, towards Mexico City. And on the way, they had lots of battles, but they also made a lot of allies who were very unhappy with the Mexica rule, because obviously they extracted tribute from all of the places, tribute as in tax. They extracted tax from all the people that they ruled over. And so it was an incredibly organized setup, a full-on empire where you were ruling, you had conquered all of these lands, and they were not one united people. There were lots of different people with different cultures, different languages, and the Spanish were incredibly successful in their kind of divide and conquer approach. But Hernan Cortez understood this because of this interpreter that he found, Malinche, who was a 17 or 18-year-old girl that was given to him as a gift. She was enslaved. So when they arrived finally in Tenochtitlan with thousands of indigenous allies, they found this amazing city. When I describe it, I try to get people to think about what people think about when they imagine the hanging gardens of Babylon, but this is like the floating gardens of Babylon. It was this designed city, it was planned city, completely immaculate and clean. The Mexica were extremely orderly. It was incredibly important to them for everything to be clean and to have a role and to a purpose. And this city had these roads that they had built to link the city in the middle. And they had floating farms called chinampas to support the city. They'd also built aqueducts from the hill Chapultepec, which was on the mainland of the valley, and had all these freshwater springs, and that fresh water would flow into the city. They had pools to bathe in. People bathed like multiple times a day because it was really important to be very clean. There was flowers everywhere. It was lush. It was absolutely astounding. The Spanish were the pyramids, the huge pyramids rising, the temples in the middle of the lake. The Spanish were astounded. They even described it as like feeling like they were in a dream. They couldn't believe that they had encountered this place that they could never have imagined in their wildest dreams. So we're talking about a very well-planned city with an extremely efficient government, political, religious setup that was ruling over hundreds and thousands of people who also had their own customs and ways of life. So this is what they encountered when they arrived. And
so many things were covered in gold.
There was lots of
that's
gold.
really that's really what got the Spanish excited. They saw gold.
They did see lots of gold, and Moctezuma sent them a lot of presents of gold because he wanted to bribe them away. He was hoping that they would see this and be like, great, we'll take this back to our and get out. I guess because Moctezuma, he already knew. There's lots of like myths about the Aztecs thinking that these people were gods or believing that they were gods. They didn't believe that they were gods. They knew that they were human beings, but Moctezuma could tell that their weaponry was advanced. He could see that they had iron swords. He had spies. He had already mapped out completely all of their weaponry. He could see that they had guns that they didn't have. He could see that they had cannons that they didn't have. And he knew that if he confronted them physically in warfare, that he would lose. So he was trying to just bribe them away, get them to go away in any way, shape, or form without having to confront them, which was very different to how he had been in his approach to other places. And obviously that also made a lot of people mad. So his brother, Cuauhtémoc, who became Emperor Huaytlatoani after him, he was very unhappy with the approach. He wanted to fight. Cuauhtémoc wanted to fight. And obviously it did end up being a big fight, a big siege. But by that time, Moctezuma was dead. The Spanish didn't do it alone either. They had their indigenous allies, and they had smallpox, which was responsible for the deaths of 90% of the population. So it ended up being a weakened population that they encountered. And I think a lot of the times people forget this kind of context. They think, the 500 Spaniards arrived and they conquered the Spanish Empire, like with just 500 men and a couple of horses. No, it was not like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming out with a novel, you have a novel, so you have to come up with a storyline, a human storyline, to bring it all sort of, all together, and something that people can relate to, and people can always relate. First of all, the idea of a will is always fun.
The idea of a will that tears a family apart, which did happen. This did happen. And I think that's, for me, I didn't feel personally very comfortable to just write from the Huichpoch's perspective, because as she was an indigenous woman, and whilst I have indigenous ancestry, it just didn't sit right with me to just write her story just from her point of view. Also, I found it very interesting to explore her legacy from the point of view of her children. And so these were half and half. They were mixed race children, which is my own personal ancestry. So I felt more connected to the children and trying to find out who their mother was. And I think it's also relatable because you don't really know maybe who your family is very much. And sometimes you find out things that you're like, what happened? And these family secrets that have been kept from you for decades, you know what I mean?
Exactly. It's Agatha Christie, where they start with the will, and then the family, they split up and go all sorts of crazy different ideas and things. So I thought actually that was a great way to start, because it really fascinates people.
They literally...
You then take them on a journey, as a mystical and incredible journey, where again, we have an opportunity to get to care about the characters.
Yes.
That's an essential thing. You still, I don't know if you read Buddy Levy's Conquistador, his book.
No, I
Oh,
didn't.
it's a brilliant piece of work. That, of course, nonfiction, and he's an award-winning author, major reporter, and that's one book that you should check out. But
Okay.
he doesn't have that. He doesn't have the novel
Mm.
side. So that's why it makes it so much more approachable for readers that they can start with you and get a feeling and understanding of the people, which is essential.
Yeah, and just the dynamics, I think, how you were talking about the kind of sisters and going on a journey with your sister. So that's exactly what happens. These two girls that are quite young, and they were quite young when their mother died, grappling with who are they without their mother, but who was their mother in the first place? Why has she decided to leave them with her story now? Why not before? And yeah, to me, the kind of quest, it was also coming of age story in reclaiming your identity and just finding who you are. I think that's something that's, I guess we are all on a journey to do that.
It's a universal feeling. And as
Yes,
a psychologist,
yes.
I
Oh,
forgot to
yes.
mention to people that you are a psychologist. So you're looking at it from that point of view, how their minds are working, the dynamics of that. Tell us about how it worked for you as a psychologist. How did you work these characters up?
Yeah, so I guess it's funny because I've had different ways to try to get to know my characters, but this time I did take a little bit more of a clinical approach in a way to, especially Isabel Cano, who is the daughter. I wanted to really understand her because we also don't know much about her and Catalina, her sister, only that they became nuns. And I was like, okay, we have to fictionalize most of these girls are. I took an approach that I would take with maybe some of my patients and ask some of the questions that I might ask and interview them in that way. Just obviously understanding that they are grieving, that they are have this legacy of being part of two worlds, of the Mexica world and the Spanish world, that they're part of a big family where in that time girls were considered to be property. So there's a lot of kind of layers into how people might feel in the situations. But at the end of the day, I do, even though I do can see sometimes my characters in terms of how what people might think or what people might do or feel or say in a particular situation, and use my psychological knowledge to draw from. Sometimes I am just lost in the story and I'm just writing, and they will do things that I didn't plan or think about. So it is also kind of I have to be careful not to be too analytical and clinical, and just let my creativity flow. So yeah, balance. There's also a lot of trauma. I think I didn't want to add trauma, so I was very wary of how do I showcase the Witchwatch's story and be honest about what happened to her, which there's a lot of trauma in the Spanish conquest, but also not perpetuate that trauma and not have this be just like a trauma porn book. That's not what I wanted. And I think having the daughters as well, kind of processing what they read and like their feelings as they get to see their mother's story, that was also a way to alleviate maybe, or palliate, or help process some of what had happened. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, it's true. The way that you go about bringing these girls on this journey, which is, as they use the word, mystical, because they do experience things that are very fascinating. And that's part of, there is this, I think I thought of with the Agatha Christie, because there is suspense in this book. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. So that's what makes it so interesting. It's such a great read.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, and I think that was also it's like how do we draw on our own kind of culture and myths? And this is what Mexicans do. This is how we also deal with really difficult situations is we draw on the mystical and on the magical in kind of a that's why I guess a lot of Latin American authors also write with magical realism because this is how we process our reality that is sometimes quite traumatic. We can just think about what's been happening in Mexico right now and everything that the narcos are doing at the moment with burning cars, burning buses, burning businesses. And like this is what we have to live with in a way. And we've built like these coping mechanisms, which is to draw on the mythical and the fantastical. And that ends up being quite beautiful in a way or in a weird way, but
In a weird way, it is.
in
It's
a
sort of a
weird
weird
way.
way. When you talk about, it was beautiful actually, watching your face as you were talking about what life was like, how the streets were clean and everything was nice and the flowers. Anybody who's been to Mexico City and they've done that floating garden, going on that tour, the
Such a
floating
mid garden.
garden,
Yeah.
you can picture it. You can picture a place with
Yes.
gardenias. Oh,
Yes.
gardenia. The smells, and to imagine the streets being beautiful and clean, everything organized. And of course, there's the elements immediately, and this is true of any American, I think, is going to think about beheadings. We,
Oh,
you
absolutely.
know,
There's also that side, and that is, as you were talking about everything's beautiful. I'm like in my head, I'm like, and they also had a giant wall of skulls.
yeah, exactly. So it's
You know,
the
so
dichotomy of it.
yes.
It's very hard to put it into perspective. Buddy Levy's book, which it's the battle plan. The entire book, beginning of the book, is all about the battle, the military side, the all the maneuvering and all of that. And of course, he talks about the bad things. He does talk about the good things too. So it was for even the Spanish at the time. They're like, "Oh my gosh, this place is so beautiful," and "Oh my gosh, what are all these heads
Oh my
doing?"
God, they no, and they just took out someone's heart. That's so absolutely, and this is, I guess, this was part of the. It was a part of a belief system. To all of them, it was a way of keeping chaos at bay, a way of keeping the sun turning. This is what they
Yeah,
believed was
well,
essential to
it's a
keep the. Yeah. So at the end of the day, like there are good and bad things about every society and every civilization. Where this is the condition of humanity, and so this is why I also put those things in there
yeah,
because
that was
how
facts.
it
Yeah.
was.
And then, oh, and I did the character, the cook, which
Oh,
brings it to
Juan.
another level. One,
Yes.
that was a good choice, I think. Again, as a writer, sometimes when you're working on something, a side character is brings everything in perspective.
Yeah, he's the yin to Isabel's yang. He's so sweet and he's such a caring character and this is I guess Isabel's love interest. And I do have to thank my agent for that because when I was telling her it's a family story, these siblings go on a quest and she was like, "Where's the romance?" And I was like, "It doesn't have romance." And she was like, "No, you please put in some romance." So this
Well,
character
and
is
it
born
works.
because of her, but it worked, and it also allowed me to kind of explore another dimension of that time that I think a lot of times is missing from history books, from our conversations about our society, and that is the fact that there were a lot of African people, both enslaved and free people, kind of came with the Spanish and also mixed with the population. And so he's described as a Moor and he's descended of African slaves. And so there was also that part that I was like, this is so important because I don't think even in many Mexican authors, they won't really write much about our African ancestry. We're seeing a bit more of that, which is fantastic, and I think it's really important to add that in and honor that part of our background. But I loved that character. He was
I did
Very
too.
special.
I did too. I thought he was great. I got a kick out of him.
Good, good.
I think it's just great. Both books are great, and this one, I think you're having fun promoting it and getting out there and meeting people and talking about it.
Yeah, I just love it. I love, yeah, because it's nice to talk about your books with people who have read them and who like enjoy them. And you spend a lot of time in your head, a lot of years thinking, what am I doing? Is this even good? Is anyone gonna like this?
Oh, I think readers have liked it, and as I said, it just you've sort of I like to say you played it right because it is
Oh,
a
Betsy.
complicated thing to bring characters to life, and in the sort of environment that they're in, it's a little bit easier than for Agatha Christie to write things that are happening in the parlor, but you've had to take all of your, or in a little English village, but you have had to face many obstacles and many challenges along the way for your girls to go.
Yes, it was very much worth it though. I really wanted to write this book. I wanted to go back to my roots, go back to my hometown. I'm from Mexico City. I wanted to like really, I felt so much love writing this book. Like I felt so much love for my culture, my history, my people, and I wanted to write these characters so that other people would love as well and would see in the human side of us, of how rich our culture is. I just
Well, I
love this
love
book
Mexico
so much.
City. I
Yeah,
love
thank
Mexico
you,
City.
Betsy.
I wish that somebody over there would read this book and say, okay, we have to have a balance. We can't live like this the way things are going on now because it could be so
No,
beautiful. You could have
yeah.
clean streets and happy people and flowers everywhere. I would just fly down to Mexico City just because I love to go on that floating. I love gardenias. I have a passion for gardenias. I grew up in
Yeah.
northern Michigan, so we never saw gardenias. Only one time, someone brought my mother a gardenia from Chicago, because that's how they got to northern Michigan in those days, and how and why, because it had something to do with her earlier life that we didn't know everything about, but that gardenia was like everything. She couldn't believe to see a gardenia and smell a gardenia because they smell different. You can grow gardenias in Michigan. You don't
Yeah.
smell them like in Mexico. I mean,
Yeah.
like it's
It's
glorious.
beautiful.
It's
Yes.
glorious. So
Yes.
yeah, but you captured a lot of that beauty, and
Thank you.
I think you did a great job. So,
Thank you,
so the name of the
Betsy.
book. So tell us again the name of the book and where they can find you. And
Yeah, so the book is called The Other Moctezuma Girls, and you can find me on Instagram. I also have a monthly newsletter that you can sign up to, and that's all basically that I do because I
that's
can't
enough.
just
Yeah,
can't
don't get
handle any more
crazy.
than that. Yeah, so basically, yeah, Instagram, Sofia Robleda, and my newsletter you can sign up through my website, which is also Sofia Robleda.
Okay, just one more thing before I let you go. I like to a couple of things. What book most influenced you as a child?
As a child,
Was there a book that it said to you, one day I could write a book, one day I can do this?
I always wrote, PatZi, I wrote in my diary. I used to just write just for myself. I never thought I would be a writer or an author. It was very random how it happened. I just started one day, had an idea for a mermaid book about mermaids. And that's how but that was like in my mid 20s, and I was in my last year of my doctorate in clinical psychology. So I just started writing that, but definitely books when I was a teenager that I clearly remember, and now I feel like they definitely influenced me, were The House of Spirits by Isabel Allende and The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I think those books really shaped me in the way that I think and feel. and they've always stayed with me. But it's just funny how I fell in love with writing a bit later on in life, even though I'd always written and I always found it therapeutic and powerful. But writing kind of fiction, it just happened a bit later. And then once I started, I've never been able to stop.
Oh, that's great. Thank you again so much for joining me today. Sophia, you are a wonderful, fascinating book and
Thank you,
just a great,
Patsy.
great person. I'm really
Oh,
very
you
happy that
too. Thank
you
you
were able
so
to join me
much
all the
for.
way from London, which is my,
Yes.
oh gosh, oh gosh.
Oh, if you're ever here, let me know, and hopefully we can have a little cup of tea.
Yeah, oh yeah, we can go to Fortnum and Mason.
Yes, I love that.
Yes. Okay. That's great. Again, thank you so much for joining me. It's been
Thank
a joy to
you.
talk to you.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
Bye
Bye bye.
bye.